Okay.
Ready? Okay, I believe it's 7 o'clock, so we will begin the February 10th meeting of the Board of Education. We will start with a roll call. I believe we have 7 present tonight, so would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will move to consent agenda, and we have 10 items on the consent agenda. And have you all had a chance to read, have any questions on the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I make a motion we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Moving on to 4.01, comments from the public. I'll read this. Parents and taxpayers of USD290 who desire to address the board on any topic related to board work are welcome to do so at this time. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to not more than 5 minutes, to appoint a spokesperson if the concern is a group concern, and to supplement verbal presentations with written reports if necessary or desired. Public comments critical of individuals are not appropriate. Please note the board will listen to the public comments but will not respond. The board may direct the superintendent to follow up at a later date on questions asked or concerns raised. We have 2 tonight that have turned in the card. We have a Lacey Brandt. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Good evening. My name is Lacey Brandt, and I am a parent and teacher in this district. This is my 6th year teaching at Garfield, 3rd grade. I'll be reading a letter, a condensed version, that was written and sent to you, board members, by one of my colleagues. He is not able to present this to you tonight due to living out of the district. My goal here tonight is to be heard. His letter begins, "First, I am thankful for your efforts on the board, especially through this pandemic. My dad has been and still is on the board at Central Heights. I've heard enough through the years to know how wearing, tough, and thankless it is. You are people I go to church with, watch coach my students, and do life with in the same community. You've endured hateful speech in person, on social media, in meetings, etc., and it's left me shaking my head that people aren't more loving in the face of disagreement. Hopefully, you don't feel disrespected or spat on through this, but instead enlightened on how you've hurt many USD290 educators. One thing I say often is, don't ask a question you don't want the answer to. You asked teachers for calendar input, so we spent countless hours providing feedback, which led to the creation of Option 3. We were excited. You asked Dr. Cobbs to explain our excitement for Option 3, but then abruptly cut him off to move and pass Option 2. I had to rewatch the recording of the meeting to process what had happened. You cut him off mid-sentence, made the motion, seconded it, and without any further discussion, voted, and it was done. As school staff, we rarely ask for change, but we are expected to be flexible. 2/3 of us teachers, as quoted in the last board meeting, asked for this calendar change. Students and staff were eager, but you cited on the not being ready for more change side of things. However, the following have changed for us. Math, reading, handwriting curricula, testing requirements, added and renewed various facilities, standard-based progress reports, Boys Town behavior skills, new phonics kits, and other tools, not to mention the continuous changes with COVID protocols. All of these changes have happened since I started teaching in USD 290 4 years ago. If change will help improve things, I am all about it. When looking at option 3, there was a concern for childcare. Finding care mid-year is probably tougher when compared to just the summer, but options of the ORC or high school kids helping could be such a cool community partnership. I love this idea. There are so many student and teacher absences, and it's not just COVID related. We currently have few breaks and are missing school for appointments, illnesses, visits to other places, etc. Those well-spaced breaks in the option 3 calendar could have helped to prevent lost learning, student absences, and teacher and staff shortages. Due to the similarities between options 1 and 2, I agree that it made the results harder to decipher. Essentially, it changes 2 days for teacher families. From a parent perspective, I was told the options weren't presented with reasons or background information and just weren't user-friendly. Individuals have expressed concerns about their decision on voting. So did the families understand what they were voting for? My final thoughts: we, who love these kids so relentlessly and tirelessly, finally had a change we were eagerly anticipating. Sadly, some are getting too tired to continue, as we have at least 4 Garfield teachers taking a break from the classroom next year, or potentially ending their careers in education because they're exhausted and ultimately feel unsupported. Here's a list of 38 signatures from Garfield staff who are in support of this letter. Thank you for your time. That concludes his letter. I would like to add that in addition to Garfield signatures, we do have 21 from Lincoln and 10 from Sunflower today. I wasn't able to get to the high school and middle school to double check those signatures. So I know there's been some confusion about the data from this survey. We've heard that word a lot. But regardless of how you group or combine the numbers, there is still an issue that exists. USD290 teachers know we are not in control of the calendar. But why send a poll out asking our opinion if the data is not going to be considered? This is not about option 3 not winning. It's about us not being heard. Our words, professional experiences, and our judgments should be considered. We have stayed quiet during this pandemic, meaning that we have kept our students in school, learned and implemented new resources, implemented and executed the ever-changing COVID protocols, on top of the most important part of our job, loving and teaching these kids. We are proud of the fact that we have been able to stay open, but it was not without sacrifice, tears, and exhaustion. Without the efforts of USD290 teachers and staff, this would not have been manageable. All we ask for tonight is that you take into consideration the amount of work and feedback that we put into the calendar options that would have been very beneficial to all staff, families, students. We would like our voices to be heard and valued. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next speaker we have is Bernard Marlar.
Good evening, Bernard Marlar, 3947 Eisenhower. I'd like to echo that speaker before me and thanking you for your dedication to the board. First, I'd like to ask the board again to remove COVID testing from the schools and stop contact tracing that's forcing kids into masking or testing. The topic has not been publicly addressed by the board for months, and so many things have changed. This system is no longer needed. In fact, no system is needed. Please return the schools to normal and allow the kids to get back to just being kids and schools back to education. Secondly, and this is going to be mostly referring to Ottawa Middle School because that's where I have my kids are students at Ottawa Middle School. But I'm alarmed at the weighted grading system and how it hasn't been addressed in some time. The last time it was pointed out that so much time goes by before it even gets discussed again or before any sort of meaningful change can take place. Meanwhile, our children are still struggling to understand why they can't get their grades where they want them or need them to be. You have wonderful teachers and great students that have proven that this 60-40 weighting system is merely another obstacle that we've thrown at them in this difficult last year. While someone may have thought it was a grand idea, it simply isn't. Or if you think it is, I would like the board to explain how my child can complete daily assignments, get 90 to 100%, and then take a test with 4 questions, miss a question, and end up with a C for the class. To me, it's absolutely ludicrous. If you're thinking I'm just making it sound bad, I suggest you go talk to some of the students and teachers and actually ask them how they feel about it and how it's impacted them personally. I assure you the struggle is real. While we wait to see how it works out or try to gather some metrics off of some data points from some arbitrary assessments, the students are having to live this out daily. Please take the time to look into this and make some meaningful changes. Let the teachers teach material and give fair assessed grade based on the child's performance and the teacher's expertise. And if you want an example of that, I read through some of the data on this winter assessment that we have, and I was floored at reading through the data. Most alarming was the goal set at 70%, and then highlighted it as if it's some sort of success story. Should we set the bar so low for the children so they can start getting A's again? Please pardon my sarcasm, but it would be laughable if it weren't our children's education at stake. This is not a success story, but rather it is time for intervention. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Section 5, reports and presentations. I believe we have an Optimist.
Fox.
Good evening. I'm Amy Foltz, the president of the Franklin County Optimist Club, and tonight I have with me Dale Fox, a founding member, Richard Jackson, and Herman Norwood. And I know you already know a lot of things that the Optimists do. Our vision is to support and help youth be the best that they can be, and some of the ways we do that is with our book program, our essay contest, our oratorical contest. We deliver back snacks, we supply snacks to the schools, and we know that you value children just the same. Our mission is to be a premier organization that can support and help youth and encourage them. And I feel that we've done that, and the best way we can do that is to partner with the schools, our schools. You've devoted your education, your careers, your time on the board, and parents that are active and watching and coming to the board meetings. You know, that all says a lot. So tonight we brought the books for the book program for the 3 elementary schools. We also offer dictionaries, and this has been an annual thing for years and years. And then we also are thankful and grateful and honored to present a donation of $1,200 to each of the grade schools. We would love to hear how you use the funds, and maybe your principals could come and visit us at one of our meetings and share that, because it just gets us excited for the next year.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing the books and obviously the donation and all that Optimist has done over the years for the kids and students in the community. Thank you very much.
I would say before we go on to the next thing, to Mr. Fox and Mrs. Foltz and Mr. Jackson, Mr. Norwood back there, the partnership that USD290 has had over the years with the Optimist Club has been phenomenal, and you guys have done so many things for our kids, not just from dictionaries and books and the donations that you make, but there have been multiple times when our buildings have needed something and have been able to reach out to civic organizations for specific kids, for specific families, for scholarship opportunities, a number of things. And the Optimist Club has always been there for our kids. They've always recognized greatness in our kids, the programs that you have to honor our best students and make sure that they feel valued means a great deal to us. So I just want to publicly thank you for all that you do, even beyond this. I know that you're here to present these things, and they are certainly important to us. But the Optimist Club of Franklin County, it goes so far beyond books and donations that you're providing here tonight, and the support that you provide for our kids is profound and certainly thanked. So thank you. Okay, Stucco.
Okay, continuing with good presentations, I understand we have a presentation from the Student Council of the high school.
Good evening. I'm going to let these three fine students introduce themselves, but they are on our executive council, correct? One of the other executive council members was unable to make it tonight, but I just asked them to come and present a little bit about what Student Council does at Ottawa High School. It's a student-led organization. It is sponsored by Keisha. These three ladies and the rest of their student council members have done a lot of really neat and innovative activities this school year and just really worked hard to try to bring back that spirit and provide other outside-the-box activities and opportunities for our students. And so, Andy, do you have their PowerPoint? Perfect. All right, so I'm going to let them introduce and tell you a little bit about Stuco.
There should be a clicker there, and they can hopefully go through.
The recorder. See that. You have it, Andy?
Got it.
Yeah, whatever. Hi, I'm Quincy Morris. Sorry. I'm a senior and I'm student body president.
Hi, I'm Molly McGrath. I'm also a senior and I'm student body vice president.
Hi, I'm Ava Waterman and I'm also a senior and I'm the executive secretary. So this year when we first started, we just really wanted to the first meeting was kind of dedicated to just kind of establishing our mission this year, our goals, and what we, in a time like with COVID where we didn't know what we were going to be allowed to do, if anything, we just decided that our goal this year just was going to be to bring back as many traditions as possible, but in a new, knowing that this is not the same world anymore and that we had to change some things. And so our goal this year was just to bring back tradition while introducing new things and new elements to make it safe for our current situation. So one of the first things we do to kick off the school year is fundraising. This is how we get most of our funding for our different activities throughout the year. So we always have a car wash. Kansas State Bank lets us use their parking lot and their water also, and we always make quite a bit of money off of this, and it's just a lot of fun for us to do as well.
So when Stuco kind of started off, we decided that it would be a fun and good idea for us to have kind of a get-together event for back to school. So we decided to have a back-to-school movie night, and this was for all grades, and we had it behind the football field. We watched High School Musical, and it was just kind of a fun way for everyone to get back in the swing of things and try to be as regular as possible with the new standards of COVID.
So our first big student council thing is always homecoming week, and it came really early this year, being 4 weeks into school or something, 3 weeks into school or something. But we always start off homecoming week the week before just by window chalking the whole downtown, just to try to get the community informed on what's going on and just bring some excitement. So one thing we were super excited to bring back this year that hasn't been done in our community for a while was a homecoming parade. So all the clubs and sports teams got to decorate a float, and then also our candidates got to ride in convertibles, which those are those pictures. And it was just a lot of fun. The community lined the streets and saw the floats go by, and it was just a lot of fun.
This is just kind of a continuation of it. Okay, so each year for homecoming, we do an event called Block Party, which is a big gathering at the courthouse where we have food and the dancers and cheerleaders perform, and then our sports captains and events kind of speak on the club or sports behalf. They kind of let us know what's going on, and they make sure we know when their next home game is, kind of just to make the community more aware of what's going on in the high school. And then also at the block party, the homecoming candidates speak, just to kind of also let the community know who the candidates are, what their interests are, what they enjoy, what they're involved in. And it's kind of just a fun way for everyone to be together, not just in the high school, but also in the community.
Another new thing we added this year, which I don't know how, I guess they did it a really long time ago, but my grandma said she did it. But we had a bonfire, thanks. Sorry, Grandma. Oops.
It just wasn't sanctioned by the
A
school.
few years ago. A few years ago. But anyways, so thanks to we have student council has had a really good relationship with the ORC this year, and thanks to several people over there have been able to put on events like this using the parking lot at Orlis Cox, and yeah, so we just put on a bonfire to kind of end right before the dance, just to, I don't know, another thing for homecoming.
Another thing we do to give back is we have a blood drive. So we just host it in the South Gym, and then any student or teacher that is wanting and able to donate can, and it's usually has a big turnout.
So another new thing we did this year to kind of bring in some holiday spirit and to keep people a little bit motivated, because this was more in the ending of the winter or end of the semester. So we decided to do a Pictures with Santa night at one of our home basketball games. This was kind of just another fun way to let the little kids feel welcomed and have our community feel the experience of Santa. And it was kind of just a way to once again bring the community together and support the basketball teams.
Winter Bash is another thing that we attempt to do every year. I think it gets snowed out about 75% of the time, but as it did this year. But our plan this year was to host a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and it's basically homecoming inside, or it's, block party inside for winter royalty. So that was the attempt.
And then our next upcoming big event is the Mr. and Miss OHS ceremony. And so this is voted on by the teachers instead of the students, and it's based off of academics and their contributions made during their time at OHS.
We also make sure to do a teacher appreciation. This is kind of near the end of the year. We do this to make sure that our staff make sure that they're appreciated for all the hard work that they do, and this is put on by Stuco, and we do it in the Science Exploratorium. All the students kind of bring in breakfast foods. The seniors normally make pancakes, and it's just kind of a fun little get-together for the staff.
So those are just some of the things that we've done this year and have coming up. But some new things that we're looking at adding is we talked a lot at our last meeting about kind of doing a community play day or something along those lines, and have talked about things like a color run, a kickball tournament, powder puff games in the fall, which there's a lot of kids who really want to do that. And then we did get our movie screen for back to school movie night, so we would really like to use that at least one more time this year. And so those are also having not so much of a dance, but kind of a spring fling, more casual get together. We're not really sure what that's going to look like yet, but it's definitely coming.
And then that's everything.
Thank you.
Thank you, girls, very much. I want to give a big shout out to them. Their sponsors weren't able to make it tonight either. It's Mrs. Hoffmeyer and Mrs. Hyatt, our school nurse. They sponsor that group, and they do a lot of really awesome things, and it takes students that are willing to come and talk with us about ideas and adults that are willing to show up and supervise and chaperone those events. And so the Stuco has just done a fantastic job this year bringing that school spirit back, and we're looking forward to all their spring activities. So thank you all.
Mrs. Whitaker and Stuco kids, I want to thank you for all the work that you do to build pride within our schools and our system. I think it's important to recognize historically that it was a lack of student pride and a lack of adult desire to help develop student pride that ultimately caused our homecoming parades and whatnot to go away. And I can remember a time when it was actually reduced to a shopping cart parade on the track for a year, which was just really ridiculous, and then it just kind of went away completely for a little bit. Stuco brought back the block party about, 10 years ago maybe, when we started doing the block party and the initial downtown chalking, and there were some stickers that, like window clings and stuff that we were putting on doors. It's continued to get better every year, and the fact that we actually got back to a homecoming parade was pretty phenomenal. And it took a lot of work and something that nobody else has been able to do for a long time. So kudos to you all, and congratulations for getting it done. I know that there continues to be conversations about trying to align OHS and Ottawa University homecoming parades if we want to continue to try to go back to the things that were historically significant in our districts and traditions. It would be awesome to be able to do that at some point in time, but I think that probably goes beyond what Stuco is able to do and trying to help align what OU's schedule is and how it works with ours. But thank you for all that you do. You guys are amazing young adults and moving into adulthood, and we wouldn't be able to do the things that our schools are able to do without your help and support. So thank you all very much.
Okay, moving on to testing update by Mrs. Bybee. I'm sorry, you won't be quite as exciting as the last one. but yeah.
I know that.
There you
Hard
go.
act to follow.
That's what
Andy, do we have a clicker? Okay, we'll see if this will work. If not, I'll just tell Andy to flip the slide. Nope, Andy, flip the slide. Thank you. I think because it's PowerPoint. Okay, so to start off, just wanted to share with you our preschool scores. These are my IGDs, and really this is early literacy, early math, numeracy skills that is one of the assessments. We still also give the gold assessment, but this one really shows us the skills that our students need to be kindergarten ready. And so it very much aligns with Fastbridge that we give in kindergarten through 12th grade. So all the color bars that you see there really just focus on fall and winter. There's a lot of purple, and what that purple is just means that they're not tested during the window. So obviously spring and summer we don't have tests yet. But you can see that the green indicates good progress for what's happening in core instruction. And so all of the areas of early literacy that are tested by my IGDs had a significant growth in the green areas. Orange, what it indicates to teachers is that they might just need to do a little something different with instruction within that specific area. And then red would mean that they may want to pull those students that are in red to actually do intervention. So it really does help drive what instruction should look like or what interventions specific kids might need, even at the preschool age. So our area that the WODB is which one doesn't belong, that was our largest gain, which was they gained 20 of our kids moved into that green. So that was a great progress on the part of our preschool teachers. So Andy, if you want to move to the next one. So this would be the early numeracy, and again, these are all skills that lead up to that kindergarten readiness. Same thing, you can see that we would obviously want our green to be as many of our kids as possible in the green, and the number of kids in our red area, which would be the area that might need intervention, has gotten much smaller. So the quantity comparison was our largest with 23 kids, 23 difference change of kids from fall to winter. So that was, our preschool has really done a lot of work. Mrs. Fanning has led our preschool teachers to really be looking at their curriculum and really looking at what are the strong components that we have and being able to address those skills that kids might be missing and making sure that we're doing what we can to be able to make sure all of our kids are ready for kindergarten. So if you want to move to the next one, any questions about preschool first before I move on? Okay, so the first grade is the only grade for winter that we have MAP for. We had made the decision to do MAP only spring or fall and spring. Winter, they can choose to, which there were some classes that teachers did go ahead and give MAP to their classes because they wanted to see the growth. But as far as a district goes, first grade's the only grade that does MAP across the board. So you can see that these are the number of students that are in each area of low, low average, average, high average, and high. And our average is 41st percentile on up. The low average, though, to be in comparison with how the state looks at their scores, and the Fastbridge is looking at those that are in the 30th percentile or on up, can be also part of that average. What you would want to think about with those kids, though, that are falling in that 30 to 40 percentile, a lot of times they just need a little bit of a boost to get themselves up. They may not need a significant or intense intervention if they're at that level. So what this can help us look at is, okay, what are those kids that are in the low category? Who are the kids that are in the low average? And then also, who are the kids that are in the high? And are we providing things for them that are challenging those kids? So the teachers can use that data to be able to help guide the things that they're doing with them within the classroom. And making sure that we understand that reaching the 70% goal, that is not our end goal, but we had decided a few years ago and we were on part of MTSS. With MTSS, our multi-tier system of support, 80%, if you have 80% of your kids scoring at your average or above, that means that your core instruction is working. And that you're going to have 80% in that tier 1, approximately 15% in a tier 2, and approximately 5% in a tier 3. And of course, we want all of our kids to be reaching average and above. So that's our ultimate goal, but we determined that we wanted to be able to see the progress. So let's start with 70%, and then we will continue to move that goal so that we can ensure that our kids, we are getting to the 80%. And I will tell you, as we look through these scores, especially with Fastbridge, because that's where you'll see the majority of the scores, is that we're gaining on that. And so I can anticipate that as we look at our strategic plan, we may be able to move that where what we present to you is reaching that 80% goal. Okay, Andy, you want to call it? So Fastbridge, so this is early math and early reading, and this is only kindergarten and first grade. So with Fastbridge, again, it is a screener. It is meant to screen for students who may be at risk for needing intervention. So what the difference between early math and early reading, Fastbridge and MAP, is that Fastbridge has skills that are very specific. MAP is a little more global. Now, a lot in first grade and early math and early reading, a lot of those skills are similar. But what you will find, so math, MAP, and Fastbridge math were actually very similar. The way that our kids scored were similar. It came out similarly as far as the number of kids in low risk, some risk, or high risk, and that's how Fastbridge gives their reports. In reading, there was quite a bit of a difference. And the reason for that is that MAP reads everything to the student. So the students are not having to do any reading on their own of sentence reading or passage reading. And so a lot of that is language comprehension then that it's measuring, versus them actually being able to read the words themselves. So with Fastbridge, in the fall, they have to do sentence reading where they're actually reading sentences. And then it jumps in the winter, it moves to a passage that they read. So you're actually getting, for us, really better data that our teachers can then use in small groups, that they're really understanding specifically what skills are they missing, or what skills do we need to be working on them with them during that small group time. So that's why you see quite a bit of a difference in between MAP and Fastbridge, and even between fall and winter. So what I put on the side there where it says kindergarten, concepts of print, so you can see the F is for fall, the W is for winter. You can see that in kindergarten, they're tested in the fall, concepts of print, onset sounds, letter names. And then in the winter, concepts of print falls off, and they are tested on those onset sounds, letter names, and then they're added word segmenting and nonsense words. And nonsense words is very difficult, but our kindergarten did a really great job of keeping the pace, because a few years ago our kindergarten was struggling. And what our kindergarten teachers do is they really went to work and looking at, okay, what are the skills that we know our kids need to be, and what's the pace that our kids need to be growing between fall and winter. And they did a great job of making sure that they understood those skills that those kids need to know, and they really incorporated that within their instruction. And we're seeing the difference with that. So even though we had a few of the more kids move into that high-risk area, overall, they increased towards that 70% goal. And some of those kids, again, moving into that high risk, we have to remember that it could be the word segmenting and the nonsense words, but the teachers have reports that they can drill down and see specifically how did each student score on each one of those skills, so that then they know which skills to be able to address with kids within their classrooms. And then same thing with first grade. So everybody, second grade through Algebra 1 kids, takes A math, and that's going to measure general math skills. So again, we really want to see that we decreased in our high-risk categories, the kids who, except for it looks like in fifth grade, the kids who scored in that high-risk category. And again, we're pushing for that 70% moving to try to be able to make sure that our kids, we have more of our kids measuring in that low risk and some risk area. I wanted to share with you just a little bit what the teacher reports that they get, because again, Fastbridge gives us very specific information versus MAP that sometimes is a little bit more global information. So I just put in there an example of what a third grade class teacher would see, is that from a math, a third grade one class, this is an actual class, it recommended that overall, based on how the students did, that they should be focusing on numbers and operations. That would be an added skill to make sure that they're addressing during whole class time. But then they have specific plans for students based on how each of their students scored. So in this particular class, 3.1 is really just a level. Don't think of it as it's a third grade skill, but it's a level 3.1 of numbers and operations. And so 9 students scored at that level, with one of those flagged as needing intense interventions at that 3.1 level. And then 3.2 operations, 4 students, and then this class had 2 students on track. So, and then the next class, Class B, shows that same school, but a different class. That class, how those kids scored, their whole class recommendation is that they would be focusing on general math, geometry, measurement, data, graphs. And the plans recommended for the students would be those listed there. Now, why I tell you that is because this really is a great piece of data that helps us with interventions, because then they know, okay, during intervention time, I have 9 of my kids, or 10 of my kids that, or no, 9 of my kids that needed numbers and operations, and you also have 4. So can we pull those kids together and let's provide an intervention for those kids in numbers and operations? And then we can look and see, okay, 3.2, there's 5 kids. Let's combine the kids with our 2 class, and we can kind of do some grouping that way to be able to really pinpoint those skills that students might be missing. So that's what Fastbridge brings to us, is that really drilling down to those specific skills that students might be needing. And then 6th through 12th grade for math, you can see here too, again, our hope is that we're continuing to decrease those high-risk kids that are in the high-risk category, and we only give to kid up to Algebra 1. And the reason we do that is that we hope that by the time they leave Algebra 1, they have the skills that they need to be successful and as far as noting high risk or some risk. What you'll see there for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, those are would mostly be kids who are in our special education classes, because they still give Fastbridge to those kids. That helps them because it really does drill down into the specific skills that they might be missing. I will let you know that then our teachers would use this information to be able to not only have that knowledge for their core instruction, so that they know, okay, I have these students who are struggling with rational numbers and algebra concepts. I may need to give them some extra support when we're teaching those concepts during core instruction, but then also during intervention time, those specific skills can be addressed. And then the high school, they use Cyclone Hour, and then they have a math workshop time for those kids who are struggling with, or whose scores are lower based on the Fastbridge scores. I will also tell you, though, with middle and high, this is something that even across Kansas that people are seeing with any of these Fastbridge or Ames Web or Dibbles, is that Fastbridge does not look very secondary. So we have to get the kids past their sample questions that look very elementary-ish. So we really work hard to try to motivate our kids to do well, and that is something I've actually talked with Fastbridge about, that they really need to make it look more at like a secondary level, so those kids don't feel like they're just doing some, kindergarten work, and it's almost demeaning to them. So I do think that there are times when kids are like, are you kidding me? You're telling me to select a ball? And that's kind of their sample questions are like, select the ball, select the shoe, and it's like, okay. So as a middle or high schooler, that can be very frustrating for them. So not that excuses any scores, but I do know that there are times when kids just kind of don't give it the thought that they probably have the ability to. So then Fastbridge A reading, again, is the general reading skills. It will also still focus on a lot of those phonics and phonemic awareness, vocabulary skills that they get during auto reading. But our reading scores have definitely continued to improve. And again, I showed you just an example of what a teacher would be able to see when they get those reports as to what areas each of the kids might need plans in or support in, and that way they can help target that during their small group time during core instruction or during intervention time. Thanks, Andy. You can move on to, and then 6th through 12th grade, we do have to give Fastbridge to all up to 12th grade. That is part of a state mandate for the Dyslexia Reading Initiative. And Fastbridge is different than MAP. MAP stops, as far as norms go, kind of at the 8th grade level. Fastbridge is designed, it has norms that are normed up through 12th grade. So what we're looking at is what other 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade kids would be scoring with Fastbridge. Again, very similar process as far as teachers being able to use that data. Auto reading is the sub-test, and really kids actually take the A reading and auto reading. It kind of goes at the same time. I mean, it goes simultaneously. but auto reading is really specific to the things that the Dyslexia Initiative would want us to be covering in our instruction. So it's definitely, it's what you and I would have thought of as grammar, a lot of the phonics, and that's what is testing. Auto reading is solely testing, but it also has somewhat of a timed measure to it. So because it's expecting it, that's the auto piece of it, because they want kids to be automatic with their responses. That should be so natural and fluid for them that's why there's a timed piece to that. So that makes it a little bit more difficult too. But honestly, I was pleasantly surprised at how our kids were doing with each of these areas, because honestly, these are the areas that we're focusing the most on in professional development, because once you kind of get past that foundational reading in 3rd or 4th grade, you don't always focus on, teachers haven't typically in the past focused so much on the phonics and how do we break words apart, and really looking at vocabulary and how to break it into syllables, and it's been more about the actual comprehension of reading. So this actually was pleasantly, I think, a pleasant outcome of how our kids did with the auto reading. Okay, and then this is our social emotional data. So this is also through Fastbridge that we look at SABRS and My SABRS. SABRS is the survey that our teachers fill out based on our students and their students. At middle and high, they do it. It's not every one of their teachers that fill this out. It's their advisory teacher. So they have a series of social skills that they rate kids on, what their feeling of risk levels are. And then My SABRS is for kids who are 3rd grade and up that rate themselves. And so what is a positive from this data that we can look at is our teachers and how our teachers view our students and how our students view themselves is very similar. And what that tells us is that our teachers have relationships with our students to the point that they understand where our kids are with their social skills. What our teachers will do with this, our counselors, our social workers, their student improvement teams, they can look specifically down to see who are our kids who are at high risk, who are our kids who are at some risk. Let's see how they rated themselves and what areas did they rate themselves as at high risk, so that we can make sure that we offer them support. And at elementary schools, they will take their Boys Town skills, and they do morning meetings, and so they're addressing that as a whole group. But then our counselors and social workers also work with social skill groups or work independently. And at middle and high, it would definitely be part of their student improvement teams, and then also being able to just work with kids individually. If they see that there is someone who's flagged as a high risk, we want to understand why. So it's been great data for us to be able to use that SABRS and My SABRS. And then this is data from our Boys Town well-managed schools. We have consultants who have been trained, who go through and do sweeps, and so basically what that is they go into the teacher's classroom, or into the classrooms, and they rate how Boys Town is being implemented, and then they have a time to be able to talk with the teacher and give them some feedback, and to be able to help our implementation of the Boys Town well-managed schools to make sure that it continues to be a focus, and that we continue to see the benefits that we are seeing from when this first went into place. So you can see from fall 2019, and those things that are listed on the side, proactive praise to correction, that's what's at the bottom of the graph. It's just a little harder to see, so it's in that same order. But you can see how the areas that have, we've improved in every area, but how much from 2019 to even the fall of 2021, how much we increased in praise to correction, and then also in the physical environment. and then even how much praise and praise to correction increased from fall to winter. So our teachers are very mindful and intentional about ensuring that when students are having struggles with behavior, that they are using the correct terminology from Boys Town Well-Managed Schools, the steps that the kids are learning how to handle, how to regulate themselves, or how to gain some control of themselves, or what to do if they're sad. And so we're very excited about the data that we see here. Any questions about, there was a lot presented to you.
Amy, while they think about questions, I'll say this. 4 years ago, this board indicated to us as an administrative team and to our staff that the level of achievement that we were seeing with our students needed to improve across the entirety of the district. With work with our staff, we identified that, one, social emotional behavior was significantly impacting our students' ability to learn, and that our resources and the guidance for our resources was probably not up to par. And over the course of the last 3 years, our staff, and there's plenty of teachers in here tonight that have worked incredibly hard in developing scope and sequence and developing appropriate standards and determining what those standards are, determining what our resources are, working to become consultants and helping collaborate with one another and teach one another how best to address student behaviors in their classroom. And we're beginning to see the fruits of those labors as our achievement scores in all aspects are beginning to rise. And certainly there is a great amount of appreciation that needs to be shown to our teachers and our staff for all of the work that they've done as we see that improvement, and it is beginning to be visible in the data that we start to present. So thank you to our staff, thank you to you and Dr. Robinson and Mrs. Fanning and all of our principals that have worked incredibly hard in developing all the resources that our teachers need, the professional development that they need in order to be able to provide the great instruction that our teachers are providing. It is really an incredible thing to watch. And again, the fruits of the labors are beginning to be seen. We believe that we'll only continue to see that growth as we move forward. So thank you to all of our teachers. Thank you to you for all the work that you've done.
And I would say if you didn't look super close, go back and look at the kindergarten, first grade math scores, because I think that is completely because of the collectiveness that those teachers have for implementing Eureka math, and they are seeing the number sense in kids and the math talk that is happening. They're super excited about it. So, and the kids are excited about math, so it's a great thing.
I will echo that. I was invited to Mrs. Lane's class a couple weeks ago and for a math lesson. I want to know I scored pretty high on most things in her class. But it was interesting to me because I was going to mention, I wrote down the Eureka. You know, we made a decision to separate Eureka and keep that in a lower level. And then she implemented over the hour, 75 minutes I was there, 6 different techniques. And it just was amazing to see how many times to keep them engaged in an hour, how many techniques she had to employ to do that. And then in talking to her afterwards about the Eureka, I think that was a good decision. So I appreciate the effort of the cadre to identify that. And I think this is the first time the district has allowed what I call a separation between Eureka and Electra. So job well done.
Yeah, great. I attribute that to the teachers.
Don't you think also too, like, I think our pre-K is what's helping a lot of our kindergarten and first grade, so there's not that big void there. When they go into kindergarten, we've already got them jump-started, and I think that goes to, you know, our pre-K at all 3 buildings now, and
absolutely,
we're going to start seeing that pay off.
Absolutely.
I think if Mr. Robinson could talk right now, he would probably also tell you that one of the ways that we believe that we can help our Lincoln numbers is by implementing a second preschool program there. It existed at each of the other buildings, and certainly there is distinguishable evidence that by not having the same impact at Lincoln that we do with our preschool programming that we do at our other 2 schools, that there's an opportunity for growth there. So that'll be some conversation for us in the future as certainly we continue to try to help our staff out and provide the best instruction that we can.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think we're ready for 5.04, legislative update.
All right.
That's you.
That's me. I think, as I've told you, I don't get too excited about the bills that are in Topeka in February because there's a lot of them. I don't believe that any of them have actually made it to the floor yet, but I think there are some things that that are being discussed right now that, depending on your viewpoint of public education, may or may not be best for public education in the future. House Bill 2511 is regarding a requirement for public schools to allow virtual students, homeschool students, and private school students to participate in activities. And ultimately, there's a caveat to this bill under a different header that would also allow them to enroll part-time in part of those courses. So there's a real distinction currently in what happens with those who choose to either be virtual school or private school or homeschool students, and how they intermingle with the public school system. And what this bill would do would ultimately be opening it up to say, no matter what, if a private school wants access to something that is taking place in the public school, it has to be allowed. So I think you can draw your own conclusions as to some things that may be concerns there. We'll continue to watch this bill, but they do continue to add different pieces to this. One is, as a caveat to this piece, but also the voucher bill that's associated with it. I'll find the number of the voucher bill here shortly, but the voucher bill is tied to this somewhat in that not only would those who would choose to attend a homeschool, private school, or a virtual school that is not currently funded by the state, they would draw funds off of the state in order to fund those programs, and then still have access to your public schools on the back side. So the voucher system in and of itself, providing additional dollars for students to go to private schools, I don't know that that's the major issue. The constraint is how funding that begins to impact the public school system. So currently, there are about 40,000 students across the state of Kansas who attend an accredited private school. So when the current base state aid per pupil is a little less than $5,000, you're talking about millions upon millions of dollars that have to be generated. Those 40,000 students are not currently funded under the state system. So by adding those students that are currently attending private schools, you increase the funding mechanisms of schools by millions of dollars, or you decrease the base state aid per pupil for everybody that's currently attending. Now remember that we just went to court not that long ago, and the Supreme Court stepped in and identified a base level of per pupil funding in the state that has to be maintained. If the voucher system goes into play in its current iteration, then there really are no options but to begin to reduce that base state aid per pupil. If they reduce the base state aid per pupil, guess what's going to happen? There's going to be another lawsuit. None of that is good for schools. Let's be honest. I think there is some fatigue of litigation as it comes to school funding, and nobody wants to hear about it anymore. But these are legitimate concerns in how we address school funding moving forward. A secondary bill to that one, and again, all of these things are tied together, would be that the boundaries of schools, specifically of public schools, would be open, and they would have to accept anybody that comes into them. Anybody that expresses a desire to attend your school. Public schools could not say no. It specifically states that same expectation is not levied against private schools. Right, so you begin to see the disparity that exists here, but within that bill, it identifies that private schools would continue to be able to levy their expectations for enrollment if you don't meet certain requirements and you're not allowed to attend attend the private school, although it would still allow access via the voucher and all of those things with public, but not everybody has equal access to private schools where everybody under the sun would have access to the public schools. So those are some bills that are currently being bannered about within committee. I think it's important for us to understand what they are and how they might impact schools. Certainly, school choice is going to be significant. Another bill that may be worth thinking about is that there's a bill currently identifying that virtual students, how they are equated to your graduation rate would differ than anybody else. And the reason that they do this is honestly because they're upset with the major virtual players, inside schools, K-12 schools, whatever it happens to be, as they see them as a money maker more than a legitimate school option. And I say that anecdotally. I think that's the notion that we have behind that. I suppose that if a legislator wanted to come and call me on that, I don't know that that's the 100% facts, but the reality of it is that this is the understanding that's been provided to us. What they're failing to recognize is that it's not typically students who, and the idea behind this is that if a student goes to a virtual school behind in credits, virtual schools shouldn't be held accountable to that student being behind in credits. And so what they identify is that if a student goes to a virtual school, there must be some reason why they would want to leave their public school, and typically because things haven't gone well. And so if they're behind a year in credits and they don't finish at the virtual school the way that they should, then it should be the original home school that is held accountable to their lack of graduation. The reality of it is, and what I would guess that Mrs. Whitaker would stand here and say with me, is that we see far more students that leave us to go to virtual schools on track and come back to us off track. It is incredibly difficult to learn in a true virtual environment. It is incredibly difficult. But if there is no expectation for people to be in class or to have requirements to provide particular documents or be held accountable to certain things, much like we are, and that's a part of the reason why we have adults and the systems that we have in place is to help kids learn about responsibility and accountability and so on and so forth. In virtual schools, that environment doesn't exist the same in every platform. There are some virtual schools out there that work really great. There are some that are less than great. No different than public schools. But what is happening here is that we predominantly see students that go to virtual schools that don't perform well and then come back to us behind in credits. There is no option for us to hold anybody else accountable to those loss of credits, so we would continue to be held hostage to how virtual schools operate. Virtual schools wouldn't under this bill be held to the same accountability that we are. So that's another one to consider. Maybe the one that is most interesting to me right now in terms of a positive for schools would be that they are considering a redaction to the Capers law that would not allow retired teachers to continue to work after retirement. So currently there is a 180-day period in which an employee cannot engage in employment with a district after retirement, with any district after retirement. And then they are held to a standard of only $25,000. If they make more than $25,000, there's a $30,000 penalty on their or a 30% penalty on their salary. I apologize, not $30,000. A 30% penalty on their salary. This bill, House Bill 2593, would redact that, make it a 30-day window for retirees to have to sit out in terms, and also would mean that no districts could engage a retiree in conversation about working after retirement for that 30 days, right? So you can't retire and have this thing set up on the side to say, hey, after 30 days, come back to us. So you can't have any conversations, but after the 30 days, you would be allowed to come back without a threshold. Make more than $25,000, great. The only thing that you would have to do is you'd have to pay in at the current rate of Capers for whatever your salary is. It's a huge benefit to teachers, especially if what teachers would identify after that point is, hey, I can draw 45% of my wage from my capers, my pension that I've paid into, and I can continue to work at my same contractual agreement and really have a really nice wage for teachers. So that would be a bill that that is exciting to see, and hopefully they can do something for our teachers coming out of the House with that one. The last one that we'll discuss is a bill that is currently being identified as the Parents' Bill of Rights. There's 4 pages of this one that I haven't had the ability to read through as of yet. It just came out today in terms of what it identifies with schools and how it exists. The concerning part is that it would require every teacher to post all of their lesson plans, all of their resources, everything that happens in their class on a website available to everybody. The vast majority of our teachers are currently doing something similar to this through Google Classroom or something else, but this would put it out there that it'd have to be specifically done on a certain spot on your website. The concern that I think that most educators will have is, one, it's an enormous amount of work to make sure that we get all of that done. 2, if you don't do it, they're intending to withhold your funding. So that's obviously they're going to have some sort of auditory process to identify who is and who is not. But I think what you will honestly see from buildings goes against everything that Amy was just talking about here, and how taking those tests, when she identified 3rd grade class A was needing to do these things for its students, and 3rd grade class B was needing to do these things for the students. What you're going to see in larger systems is they're going to take that work away from teachers, and they're going to say, here's the canned curriculum, and here's what you have to do every day. On February 2nd, this is what you're teaching. So that there is no way that there's going to be any audit process that's going to come back and say schools are going to lose funding because we didn't post something on the internet. And ultimately, that is the scary piece of this. Taking the autonomy away from teachers to make good decisions about what their students need the most and how best to provide it for them is a concerning conversation that's taking place. As I read more about the Bill of Rights, I'll share it with you. I've got the documents. I'll put it in the board update for you all. But that's what I know what's going on in Topeka right now. I continue to have conversations with Blaine and make sure that he is aware of what our thoughts are on this. They've had some hearings already. I will tell you that the data that's coming back from the hearings is that there is strong opposition coming towards the voucher bill the open boundaries policy, the entrance to schools for homeschool, private school, and virtual schools. There's strong opposition from the people who are presenting to our legislators. That really doesn't mean anything at this point. We'll continue to see how it goes. But those that have been presenting and testifying to our lawmakers to this point have been predominantly opposed to those bills. We'll see if that gets us anywhere or what it does, or if it creates changes in any of those things. But that's what I know to this point. Any questions for me? I don't know that I have answers to them, but I can certainly begin to try to find them.
Any questions?
Good, you let me off the hook. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to Section 6, Policies, Contracts, Bids, and number 6.01 is Tiny K. And I believe Dr. Robinson will present.
Well, Amy did a nice commercial for us earlier. As you start to look at what some of our preschool data, I think it shows even more the benefit of having something like Tiny K. We're one of the few districts our size that have our own infant toddler program, and there's a huge benefit to the preparation and the communication that goes on between Tiny K and our preschool programs, and making sure that our 3-year-olds coming into our preschool are ready. When we talked to the board in July about expanding into Osage and into western part of Franklin County, we asked for you to do it on a 1-year basis so that we could see, one, the concerns I heard from the board were, was it going to pull resources away from our students that live within our district and reside within the Ottawa School District? And two, just what was the overall impact financially? What I would tell you right now is everything we projected in July, we are on track. The number of students right now, we had projected for the whole year somewhere around 160 to 170 students total. We're at about 118, 120 right now, with a lot of referrals that have come in since December. So what that means is it's likely we're going to see similar funding going into next year to what we have currently. And what the additional funding source has done is it has done what we projected it was going to do. It has stabilized our program. For the years prior to this, at this point in the year, Terry and I were normally having a conversation about how we kept from dipping into our general fund to manage our infant toddler program, and changes we could make going into the spring to make that possible. This year, it appears right now in our budget that there's still a buffer, which we had hoped for. And so I would anticipate we're going to go through this year and have some money to spend. Some of that we will get better at putting it into things that impact students as we know how the whole, adding a different area is going to work for us. The one thing we are watching closely is our additional travel costs. They are up significantly, but we also had budgeted quite a bit to cover those. So at this point, what I would tell you financially, staffing-wise, we're not pulling any resources from our general fund at this point, and I project that what it's going to do is actually protect us from having to do that. So for a number of reasons, it would be my recommendation at this point that we look at making this a more permanent thing for our system. Part of why I would ask for you to consider that at this point is, one, JC and her team are starting to put in spring applications for funding. And so KDHE is starting to try to figure out how do you manage those applications when we don't know what the district's commitment is to that. But the other piece of it, it'll let us do a better job of managing those funds, because one of the big questions that we've had all along is how to best staff this program. And being able to determine whether we contract some additional occupational therapy services to keep from having to dip into what we have in our pre-K-12, or whether we add another speech-language pathologist, it would help JC and I to be able to sit down and really look at those needs. Obviously, any staffing decisions that are made will come back through our Board of Education, but right now we don't feel like we can do any of that because we're dealing with a short-term issue. And so the discussions about staffing changes and things like that when it ends July 1 is kind of tricky. So it would really help us in doing a better job of preparing for next year to make some of those decisions at this point. And that's why I wanted to come to the board at this point and ask if there's additional information that you all need to be able to make that decision. But it would be highly recommended from my standpoint at this point to make this a more permanent thing. I would remind the board that one of the pieces, unfortunately, that we learned through this process is how easy it is to get out of the Tiny K business. And I only mention that at this point to say, by making it permanent, there is still an out should we get to a point 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road where it is hindering us to be able to do what we need to do for kids in the Ottawa School District. There is still an avenue to do that and to do it the right way and protect our district. But I think at this point it's actually going to provide protection by expanding into Osage and into the western part of Franklin County. There's one little piece of southern Franklin County that we would still like to talk to KDHE to have the whole thing under our umbrella. But at this point, it's protecting our district more than hurting it. And so I'd open the floor to any questions that you all might have.
Questions for Dr. Robinson?
So what kind of action needs to be taken to continue that?
Well, this is an interesting one because technically I don't know that we sign any contracts until later this spring. But I mean, I would lean on Dr. Cobbs. I would request a motion that we make it a permanent part of how we do business.
The motion would be that we continue the expansion of Tiny K for the 22-23 school year. and then we can work through the contracts as they come available to us through KDHE. But that at least gives us the avenue to tell KDHE, yes, you can count on us to do this for another year, and then we'll work through the remaining pieces.
I had a question. The staff that is doing this, are they using their own vehicles, or do we have district vehicles that they
No.
use?
So the interesting thing with infant toddler is we're their funding agent, but they're separate from USD290. So I think this will be one of the ongoing conversations. Right now with infant toddler, they're driving their own vehicles and we're paying mileage rather than them utilizing district vehicles. With 3 or 4 employees, it would be something we'd have to phase in over time for, to be able to do it. The other piece is at least one of our employees currently lives in the Osage area, so saving her sometimes of being able to come all the way in. But it is something that JC and I have discussed a little bit, the pros and cons of adding vehicles to Tiny K for them to utilize that way. I will tell you they don't love the idea, but cost-wise, we'll sit down and look at how that might, benefit both of us at some point.
They don't love the idea of adding district vehicles, like they like using their own vehicles?
Yeah.
So, okay, that was my next
I think it gives them more flexibility in how they're scheduling it. I think the other piece is your infant toddler services aren't locked into an 8 to 4 schedule that sometimes they're providing them in the evening. So being able to do that and then go on and do something else rather than having to bring a district vehicle back to a specific location. There's some things flexibility wise for them it allows them to do. Their contracts are unique too, and that's the other piece that would be a good discussion long term. Currently, they work under a teacher contract, but infant toddlers are required to provide services all year long, all 12 months. And so this has been one of the challenges for our business office since taking this program over 10, 12 years ago. But with having staff that are specifically designated to Tiny K, it'll be something else that we can explore. And that's not an additional cost necessarily because we're already paying an extended school year contract for summer, but it would let us just structure it more appropriately to meet what their job expectations are.
So the cost for us paying them mileage versus us getting, even though it would be a
Yeah.
phase-in approach, have you looked at which is more beneficial for the district?
So right now, we're working off 6 months of data. What I would tell you so far is with the 3 employees that we're paying, I think as of today, what's run through, we're looking at about $7,500. So I mean, it's a large expense compared to what we were doing last year, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not huge. And I think it's something that I could probably give you a better answer in June or July once we see what a full year looks like. But it is something that JC and I have started talking about as to whether or not it would be beneficial down the road for them.
Thank you.
So you're tracking it currently?
Yeah, there's a lot right now that we're watching. We chose this year, we had to add some staff in July. If you remember, we added an additional early childhood special ed teacher to that team to be able to help in providing the Osage services. But we've held on making any other staffing changes until we could get more data and really see what the needs of the program are. There's some things specific to infant toddler that we have brainstormed about for a while. Like it would be nice to have access to someone with feeding specialist, our specialty in feeding. Our occupational therapists have done some things with it. Our speech language pathologist has done some in it. But I would think from talking to both of them, they would tell you it's not something they do enough for our more intensive needs in our community to be able to meet those needs. So that may be something that we pursue as some kind of contracted services. There's a few individuals that are contracting with infant toddler programs around the state to provide some of those services. It's not something you would need every day here, but there's some things like that we haven't been able to explore because of the limited resources that this expansion allows us to do. Other questions?
Mr. President?
Okay.
Any further discussions or comments or questions?
No.
Do I hear a motion to continue the Tiny K program for school year 22-23?
So moved.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue to grow the Tiny K program through the next school year.
Okay.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we continue to grow the Tiny K program for school year 22-23. Do I hear further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign, please. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, moving on. 6.02, jump pit area surface bid.
Before we get to jump pit, I think it is worth stating to those that may be watching or those that might watch later, is that, again, 4 years ago when we started talking about the strategic plan, early childhood was a huge piece of our growth and how we wanted to begin to benefit the achievement of our students in a different way. I think in listening to Dr. Robinson and our staff talk about what our Tiny K program does, it really sheds light on schools not just being K through 12 schools. It's not just about kids coming to school every day and learning in a classroom. We have some staff that do some incredible things in the homes of our families and work with our families to really make sure that our kids are prepared to come to school when it's time for them to actually come to school. So kudos to them, and again, if they're listening, thank them for all the work that they do. Jump pit surface bids. We have had years of conversation about the track, and we are so close to being done with the things that we identified that we were going to do with the track, and it warms my heart to be to be here. But
Without any lawyers.
yes. So we did some really nice renovations of the field areas, and if you've been out to look at what our shot put rings look like, man, they're awesome. Long jump and high jump pits are really looking great, all of that stuff. What we need to do now is make sure that we put the track surface on top of the concrete that goes along there, and we knew that that was going to be costly. It was also going to be additional cost because we extended each of them by 20 some odd feet or whatever it happens to be. So we did put a request for bids out and reached out to multiple companies. Didn't hear back from all of them, but we did hear back from 3 of them. And you see their bid packages there. And ultimately what this is to put a red track surface down similar to the one that is on our track now, the rubberized surface on those concrete areas going both directions towards the pits, as well as painting the things on them that are going to need to be painted there. So you have 3 options there. It again would be my recommendation that we approve the bid with United Sports Systems. They're out of Wichita. They are a great track system. They have worked with us before in trying to keep our old track put together when it was not in great shape. So we have history with them, and very excited that we may have the opportunity to have them finish up this project for us. So any questions for me on track bids? Yes, sir.
The only thing I didn't see in their proposal was what warranty they offered.
Right.
Some of the others did, and somebody disclosed that they couldn't give a completion date, and I didn't see that they could. So those are my 2 things after what we've went through before.
Yep.
The one, we have a
Which
warranty
one?
in writing, and 2, a completion date. We don't need a to be determined date.
No, I think one of the reasons that I'll follow up on warranty, but I think one of the reasons we didn't get a completion date is because they didn't know how quickly they could start depending on board approval.
Well, I just found it interesting.
Yep.
One of the people put in their proposal that they couldn't give a completion date because of COVID, and
Yep. Yeah, so if you wanted to make a motion to go with United barring an appropriate warranty system and a completion date, that at least gives me the wherewithal to start working with them, and we can go from there, but I'll follow up. If they can't do either of those things, I'll bring it back to you all.
okay.
Is this temperature dependent?
Yes, it'll be the same as before, so we'll have to wait for a window of opportunity that the temperature is going to be. The difference is it's not near as much.
Yeah, I was gonna
Right,
say.
so if push comes to shove, I would imagine that we can do some heated tunnels and some different things to make sure that,
Yeah.
I don't know that for a fact, but it's not 200 yards of track.
Yep.
So have you already, you said you already took care of the existing?
Yes, we have a new track that's there.
Because none of the bids show that they'll take care of the existing, what's already theirs.
There's nothing there.
Well, it didn't look good, so you said you've added 20 feet?
Yes.
Okay. So you've already taken care of all the asphalt,
There's no asphalt there. It's all concrete. And currently what the surface is a lay down rubber mat, like in essence a just a horse mat that
Looks like
lays down on
conveyor-
the track. They're just
conveyor
going to
belt.
lift it up and lay down the track
Looks
surface.
like a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
What they're laying it on is already
Yes.
finished?
Yes.
Okay, because,
Yes.
yeah, the contracts don't say anything about
Yeah, no,
that.
it's finished, it's ready to go. It'll lay directly over the concrete.
Okay.
Yep.
So I guess I make a motion, we accept the United Sports System bid pending the two items.
Pending warranty and completion date.
Correct.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the United bid for $25,250 with the additional stipulation about warranty and completion date. Do we have further discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay.
Okay.
Coming back.
So we're bringing Dr. Robinson back up and to speak to us about 6.03 Boys Town contract for professional development.
So Dr. Cobb's mentioned our strategic plan and continuing to work on the social emotional supports that we have in our district has been built in from the very beginning. And I provided the board a little bit of the history already, and I won't repeat all of that just for sake of time. What I would tell you is we implemented Boys Town at the elementary level because we were seeing significant social emotional needs of students. It hasn't eliminated them, and I just want to make that clear. This Boys Town is not going to make behavior just magically disappear. What it hopefully is doing, though, is providing supports for our staff in how they address those things, but also it's really separating the need for our social workers and our more skilled behavior interventionists to really be able to know who are the kids that with instruction and with exposure to social skills are able to manage and are able to make changes, and who are those who are going to need real significant interventions. I would tell you right now, as we start to look at our data, and I shared some of that with you, we're at the same kind of tipping point at the middle school. We're seeing a high number of office referrals. We're seeing a high number of students involved in office referrals, and we have fewer students there than we had 2 years ago with the comparison data. So there's a great need for being able to equip our middle school staff. And Mr. Stoltenberg and I have been talking for quite some time about when it was appropriate to do so. Right now, I feel is the right time for several reasons. One of those obviously is need. The other one is part of what we were provided at the beginning of this year were ARPA funds specific for addressing needs of special education students or preventative strategies to reduce the need for students to access special education. I would tell you one of my concerns right now, and Mr. Stoltenberg and Mrs. Bybee and I have been watching it closely, are the number of students in special education, specifically at the middle school level, who have either been taken to long-term suspension hearings or are approaching points that would warrant that, which makes this an easy tie-in for us to utilize those funds to address something that'll have a bigger impact at the middle school. So we started working with our Boys Town rep. The cost proposal you'll see, the main priority is Ottawa Middle School. The sticker shock of seeing Boys Town for some of you for the first time, it is expensive, but understand we are choosing to access them for the initial training because we want to make sure that we're bringing trainers in who are used to training at the middle school level. What we will do at that same time is bring our trainers that we have in-house who have been focused at the elementary level in. They will sit in the training. They'll also consult with our Boys Town trainer on how they can adjust their approach to make it to where this cost should be a significant one-time cost, and we should be able then to incorporate our middle school staff into new teacher training in the future with our elementary staff because it's a similar model. The examples obviously are going to be different in how you use it, but the model itself, the overall big picture model, is the same thing, and we can utilize our trainers to do that. The other piece that's in that cost is training consultants, and consultants can do a number of things. The biggest thing we talk about is the Boys Town data that you see in the data sweeps. We want to make sure that's there for our middle school staff as we implement, because getting feedback to our elementary folks is when we saw significant change in how it was being utilized. And so we want to make sure that piece is there early on. The other thing they can do, though, is they're also trained to do small professional development and in-service for staff. So part of why we would want to do that up front is to make sure that in professional development days or in small PLC opportunities, that if there's a need, if there's something that teams are struggling with, that the middle school has staff in-house that could do some short professional development to address specific skills. So overall, the biggest part of this cost is there. There's about $3,000 of this cost that is geared towards a one-day workshop with Denise Pratt, who's our Boys Town rep, and we're lucky she's from Ottawa and enjoys coming here. She does a great job for us. But there's one day built in to go back and refresh at the Engage program, and Engage is using a more intensive model of Boys Town. And so we chose, rather than to do a whole full 5-day training there, to really identify the needs that were there, and one, to save the district some money in doing so, but also all of our teaching staff has been trained previously. Having them sit through a 5-day specialized classroom training, again, didn't sound like a good use of their time. But there are some things that it would be good for us just to tighten up. I talked with some of those staff members this last month about our training options. And I would tell you there's a whole lot of support from the certified teachers over there for how specialized classroom is being utilized. Some of them have seen our program from pre-Boys Town to now, and their wording was they wouldn't go back. That it has had a significant impact on putting some structure to our alternative program. So I probably talked longer than I needed to. What questions do you guys have about this proposal? I know it's a significant amount of money.
So if we didn't use Boys Town, can we not do that on our own? I mean, it just seems like a common sense approach. I know teachers in the past have learned that in school, counselors have learned that. I don't know if they're still learning that in college.
Yeah. So I would tell you, just in the last month, we've had 3 meetings on different students at Ottawa Middle School debating whether they needed to go to an alternative school setting. When you analyze their data specifically, there's behavior there. Don't get me wrong, there's significant behavior there. In all 3 instances, as we analyze their data, giving our staff better skills to address those issues keeps those students at Ottawa Middle School making progress rather than them having to be provided an education at another setting. Can we do it? We are right now. I would tell you the result we're getting right now, though, is not meeting the needs of a large group of our students.
Further discussion.
I'm excited to see how it will help us at the middle school and give some new options there. I know that there, like you said, there have been some issues, and so I'm excited to see how it can, like I say, help them and just provide them with new options to try out and see how we can do to improve, the environment and what effect it'll have.
I think it gives teachers another resource, a structured resource, a proven resource,
Absolutely.
from my standpoint.
And the work that you have done with this over the time since it's begun has just been pretty incredible. When you look at how it's been implemented and carried through and the work that it's done, it's been pretty outstanding.
Well, and there is a variation at the high school level. What we've talked with Mrs. Whitaker about is having a few leadership team members sit in on this training. And for them to be part of the discussion next year. The high school model is a little bit different because it really shifts. The focus right now is on teaching skills and making sure people can use them appropriately. By high school level, there's a little bit of an assumption that most of our high schoolers have already been exposed to those skills and been taught those skills. So it really is about how do your choices impact your relationships. So if I choose not to follow your directions, what does that do to the trust I have when I go back into your classroom? What does it do to the peers sitting in the room? And I know we all have those conversations with our kids. What it does, again, is it puts common language and a common approach for our schools to utilize, which is something we've been trying to do district-wide.
I think that would be good if we had that opportunity, because, I mean, we've all ages, we've missed out on social opportunities the past few years, and I think it's part of what we're seeing with the behaviors, and I think that anytime that we can help our kids with realizing that their choices do have consequences, and everybody wants to think that the high school, they're all so grown up, but in reality, they're still kids, you know? So I think that we are still responsible for helping them to shape their decision-making, and that we are responsible to help them the best that we can. So I think that would be a good opportunity too.
I think it was identified before as the biggest need we had in our district. That and tiny K or pre-K, whatever you want to call it. And so I don't think that is changing. It's getting worse, but it's not getting better without help.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the contract with Boys Town for $46,058.57.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Boys Town contract for $46,058.57. Do we have further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we are down to personnel report. I think you've all been presented the personnel report. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. And do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved second on the personnel report. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
All right, here we are at the end. A couple of things before we go. Just a reminder that there's no school on the 18th. It's a professional development day for staff. City County USD will be next Wednesday at the city. If anybody is interested, let me know. City's still deciding where they're going to do it. So there's still some concern regarding COVID, and they're trying to identify whether or not they want to do virtual or in person. I indicated to them that we would be fine doing in person. So we'll see where they're at. I'll let you guys know. If you're interested in attending, please let me know. Don't forget that as we've changed, it's been kind of difficult for me to remember Mondays and Thursdays, and for 6 years I got used to every other Monday being at a board meeting. And so don't forget that on the 24th, which is not next Thursday, but the following Thursday, we have our first work session. We'll look a little bit different. Remember that we meet for those at 6 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. Make sure that we get everything out there. Also remember that there'll be no other business and no action during that night. So no public comment. It is simply a work session specifically for capital outlay. And so if there's information that you all need regarding capital outlay, please let me know. I'll get some information to you over the course of the next couple of weeks in the board update. But I think what I would really like to see our board focus on is where do we want to be in a 3 to 5 year capital plan? What do we deem as important, and how do we want to direct funds over the course of those next few years? An amazing thing that maybe you hadn't thought about, as of tonight, we are exactly 4 weeks away from spring break. So that will be nice, and maybe it will actually be light outside when you get out of school and get off of work, and maybe the sun will shine a little bit, and we can go on. I do want to thank Amy and all of our teachers and Josh and the things that they've presented tonight. We have seen significant improvements on our strategic plan over the course of the last 4 years. Are we where we want to be? No. Have we seen some things that have impacted us that have made us change course a little bit? Yeah. We're seeing it at the middle school right now with behaviors, and not necessarily something that we expected, but it also gives us a grand opportunity to begin to do some different things there, and maybe help our teachers have additional tools within their tool belt to address some of those needs. But it has been pretty remarkable, some of the achievements and the successes that we've been able to witness in our district over the course of the last 4 years. And certainly the leadership of our board is to be appreciated and thanked for that. The work of our students and staff and all that they've done to be a part of that is certainly thanked and appreciated. The work of our administrative team to continue to provide the guidance and the resources for our teachers to do amazing work with our kids. And I would be remiss to not thank nursing staff, transportation staff, maintenance staff, custodial staff, support staff, special services staff, tiny K staff, pre-K staff. I know that there's going to be somebody that I've left out here. But it has been very much a team approach over the course of the last 4 years, and it is really nice to begin to look at some of that data and see a lot of green, where before we would see a lot of red. And so we celebrate our small successes and we continue to strive for improvements. But there is no doubt that our district is in a much better place today than it was 4 years ago when many of us started. So again, thank you to the board for your leadership and your guidance and your support of all of the things that we've tried to do to benefit our kids. I appreciate you all very much. And at that, it's oh yeah, shameless plug. Oh yeah. Musical Schoolhouse Rock. If you remember the Schoolhouse Rock, it is next weekend, February 18th and 19th. So that's a Friday and Saturday at 7 o'clock. The matinee is on Sunday at 2 o'clock. Our kids have done an amazing amount of work to be prepared. Elementaries are going to come watch Thursday. So again, this is what the PAC has brought us, right? When we couldn't do some of these things, really beginning to grow the fine arts programs at our elementaries, having them come over and watch what our kids do. This is a big piece of what the PAC has been able to provide for us. So if you get a chance, come see it. Mrs. Miller is amazing, and she's done so many more things probably than she's needed to or has been asked to do in that program. But she is a true lover of the fine arts, and we appreciate having her very much, as well as everybody else that's been involved. That's all I have.
Mr. President, I've got a question.
Fire away.
Okay, just off topic. When we get things like this and the money for the elementaries, and we've gotten things from other people also, do we write a thank you note or something? I mean, I know we publicly thank them, and I know it went to, it's a weary group of people that we're working with.
I'll make sure that it happens.
I just wondered from the future.
Yeah.
Did send thank yous for last year for the books that they got. I know that.
Yeah, because we
I
used
think
to love to get things
so.
from
I think
so they
that
write thank yous.
I don't know that we send them on behalf of the district as a whole, but as an example, American Eagle and their donation to the STEAM bus, there was a huge thank you that came out from OHS and from our students for those. But we certainly try to make sure that we're acknowledging what they've done. But we'll put together a district response and make sure that we take care of them there as well.
I was actually going to say something that ties into all this, but then I didn't know if we were supposed to be saying anything more. But I think it was American Eagle a couple years ago that made the donation of those ukuleles to the elementary, but then we weren't able to use them because of COVID. So this is like the first time that they're really on about. And I am amazed at what Mrs. Todd, I'm sure the other buildings are doing amazing things too, but I just don't get to hear or see about it. I mean, that is amazing.
They're doing some awesome stuff.
Yeah, and so I just think that shows how great it is, our community donations, like Susan was saying, and I think it would be just great if we could send them like a little video snippet or something of those, because it's pretty impressive.
It would be kind of awesome. Put Mrs. Whitaker's kids on the spot again, but we've got some pretty talented kids at the high school. But if they could edit a little video. What do you mean, start asking? I thought that was something that already occurred. But put something together that we could say, hey, a thank you, and a little 10-second or 15-second snippet of them doing something. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah.
I echo that. I think it's also, the Optimists who did tonight, they said the same thing. It'd be nice to know, as this money gets implemented, that'd be great. I too was going to echo, our next meeting is the first work study session. We've talked about this for years. We're going to roll it out. And so I'm excited about being there. So I'm going to prompt Dr. Cobbs and remind him a couple times to spur you on. I know you guys are going to leave tonight. You're going to be excited the next 14 days with anticipation of this work study session. That's all you're going to think about. So you're going to give a great feedback. But remember, without your feedback and without your questions, then the staff can't be prepared. So the idea really behind it is that as you start putting out some information, the updates, read it and come up with your questions so that we can prepare questions back to the staff so they can come and really present us information that you want, we need to actually make good decisions. And so hopefully this is just the first of many work study sessions we have planned that we can roll up our sleeves, have a little bit different dialogue. So I'm excited about it as well.
We'll make sure that Daryl is there on behalf of our maintenance department. We'll make sure that each of our building principals is there to talk about specific building needs as they come about. Tracy will be there. She'll talk a little bit about how the capital budget is developed, what it looks like, the course of that budget over years previous, future years, and what it looks like. So there'll be plenty of information. You guys will probably leave there going, oh my God, I had no idea about all of the things with capital outlay. It is a kind of a different beast, but it should be a great learning experience for all of us.
Very good. Any other comments? Any other announcements? Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved, seconded, that we adjourn the meeting. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, say